The name came during the Q&A segment. A woman in her 60s raised her hand, was called upon, and instead of asking a question, simply said a name. Vincent Delacroix. Jimmy Fallon smiled politely, waiting for the rest of the question. But the woman just stood there, watching him with an expression that mixed hope and grief in equal measure. "I am sorry," Jimmy said. "Is that your question?" "Who is Vincent Delacroix?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "He is the reason you are alive," she said. "And I have spent 35 years waiting for you to know his name." Jimmy's smile flickered. The audience shifted uncomfortably. This was not the usual Q&A territory. "I do not understand," Jimmy said carefully. "Who are you?" The woman's voice was steady despite her tears. "My name is Marie Delacroix. Vincent was my husband, and on September 12, 1989, he died saving your life." The studio fell completely silent. Jimmy felt something cold spread through his chest. September 12, 1989. He knew that date. He had thought about it every year for 35 years. But he had never heard the name Vincent Delacroix. "I think there has been a mistake," Jimmy said slowly. "I was not in any accident in 1989. Marie Delacroix shook her head. "You were," she said. "You just do not remember it. Let me take you back to understand why an unfamiliar name could shatter a man who thought he knew his own history." September 12, 1989. Jimmy Fallon was 14 years old and walking home from school. It was a Tuesday, unremarkable in every way, the kind of day that gets lost in the blur of adolescence. He was taking his usual route, down a side street that cut through an industrial area, a shortcut that saved 10 minutes, but that his mother had told him to avoid. He was thinking about a girl in his class, about the comedy sketch he was practicing for the school talent show, about nothing important. He did not see the truck. A delivery vehicle, brakes failed, was barreling down the street at 50 miles an hour. The driver was pumping the pedal, horn blaring, unable to stop the 3-ton vehicle that was heading directly for a 14-year-old boy who was daydreaming about making people laugh. Vincent Delacroix saw everything. He was 34 years old, a construction foreman working on a building at the corner of that intersection. He had stepped outside for a cigarette, was lighting it when he heard the horn, looked up and saw the truck, followed its trajectory, and saw the boy. There was no time to shout, no time to think, no time for anything except action. Vincent dropped his cigarette and ran. He covered 30 feet in what witnesses would later describe as an impossible time. He hit Jimmy at full speed, a flying tackle that sent both of them tumbling out of the truck's path. Jimmy rolled into a pile of construction debris, unconscious before he understood what had happened. Vincent was not as lucky. The truck clipped him as he dove. The impact was not direct, but it was enough. He hit the ground with a sound that the witnesses never forgot, a sound that haunted them for years afterward. Jimmy woke up in the hospital 2 hours later with a concussion and a broken arm. He was told he had been in an accident, that he had hit his head, that he needed to rest. He did not remember anything between walking home and waking up in a hospital bed. The doctor said the memory loss was normal. Traumatic amnesia. His brain had protected itself by erasing the moments it could not process. He would probably never remember what happened. His parents were told a different story. They were told that a construction worker had saved their son's life. They were told that the man had died 2 hours after the accident, internal bleeding that the doctors could not stop. They were told his name was Vincent Delacroix, and he had a wife and a 3-year-old daughter. Jimmy's parents made a decision that night. They decided not to tell him. Their son was 14. He was sensitive, creative, prone to carrying guilt that was not his to carry. They believed in the way that parents believe they are protecting their children, that knowing a man had died saving him would destroy something essential in their son. So they told him it was a hit and run. They told him no one saw what happened. They told him he was lucky to be alive, and they moved on with their lives. For 35 years, Jimmy Fallon believed he had simply been hit by a truck and survived. He never knew about the 30 feet. He never knew about the flying tackle. He never knew about the man who had 2 hours to live and spent them bleeding internally while the boy he saved slept peacefully in the next room. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Marie Delacroix had wanted to tell him. For 35 years, she had wanted Jimmy Fallon to know her husband's name. But Jimmy's parents had asked her not to. They had come to her, weeks after the funeral, and begged her to let their son heal without the weight of Vincent's death. They had offered money, offered to set up a trust for her daughter, offered anything if she would just let them protect their child. Marie had refused the money, but she had agreed to the silence. Not for Jimmy's parents, but for Jimmy himself. She had seen him at the hospital, this skinny teenager with bandages on his head, sleeping peacefully while her husband's body grew cold in the morgue. She could not bring herself to add to his suffering, so she raised her daughter alone. She built a life around Vincent's absence. She watched from a distance as the boy her husband saved grew up, pursued comedy, became famous, made millions of people laugh. Every success of Jimmy Fallon's career was proof that her husband's sacrifice had meant something. But as the years passed, as Jimmy became more and more public, Marie began to feel something change. Her daughter grew up. Jimmy's parents grew old, then died. The people who had asked for silence were gone. And Marie realized that Jimmy deserved to know. Not for her sake, not for Vincent's sake, but for his own. He deserved to know who he was, where he came from, would have been given so that he could exist. She tried to reach out through official channels. Letters to his agents, to his production company, to anyone who might connect her to him. Every letter went unanswered. Either they never reached him, or they were dismissed as fan mail from a disturbed stranger. So she got a ticket to The Tonight Show. She sat in the audience. She waited for the Q&A, and she said her husband's name. Back in the present, Jimmy was standing at the edge of the stage, staring at this woman who had just rewritten his entire understanding of his own history. My parents knew? Marie nodded. They asked me to keep it secret. They thought it would be better for you. Jimmy felt something crack inside him. His parents, who had taught him everything about honesty and truth, had kept this from him for his entire adult life. They were trying to protect you, Marie said gently. I did not agree with their choice, but I understood it. You were so young, and the guilt of knowing someone died for you, that is a heavy thing to carry. But this is the moment no one in the studio and no one watching at home ever saw coming. Marie reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. She walked toward the stage, and the production team let her come. Some moments were too sacred to interrupt. This is Vincent, she said, handing the photograph to Jimmy. Jimmy took it with trembling hands. A man in his early 30s, dark hair, kind eyes, a smile that suggested he found the world amusing. He was holding a toddler in his arms, a little girl with her father's eyes. He was a good man, Marie said. He worked hard, loved his family, laughed easily. He was the kind of person who helped strangers, not because he expected anything in return, but because that was who he was. She pointed at the little girl in the photograph. That is our daughter, Claire. She was 3 when he died. She does not remember him. Jimmy could not speak. He was looking at the face of the man who had given everything so that he could stand on this stage, make people laugh, live the life he had lived. He ran 30 feet, Marie said. Witnesses said it was like watching someone fly. He hit you so hard you both went tumbling, but you landed in the debris. He landed in the path of the truck. Her voice cracked. He was alive for 2 more hours, conscious for some of it. He asked about you, the boy. He wanted to know if the boy was okay. Jimmy was crying now, silent tears streaming down his face. The doctors told him you would survive, and he smiled. The last thing Vincent ever did was smile, knowing you were going to be okay. Jimmy looked at the photograph, at this stranger who had died smiling because a 14-year-old boy would live. I have spent 35 years becoming who I am, Jimmy whispered, and I never knew that it all started with him. Marie took his hand. That is why I am here. Not for acknowledgement, not for recognition, but because you deserve to know that your life is a gift. A gift that cost Vincent everything. And he gave it freely, without hesitation, because that is who he was. She squeezed his hand. I needed you to know his name. I needed you to carry it with you. Because as long as you remember Vincent Delacroix, he is not really gone. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. What happened next would become the most significant moment in Tonight Show history. Jimmy brought Marie onto the stage. He sat her in the guest chair and spent the next 2 hours learning about the man who had saved his life. Marie told him everything. Vincent's childhood in Louisiana, how they met at a dance in 1982, their wedding, their daughter, the life they were building before September 12, 1989. She brought videos, home movies from the 1980s that showed Vincent laughing, playing with Claire, being the kind of husband and father that every family deserves. Jimmy watched himself at 14, walking to school on a Tuesday morning, having no idea that a stranger was about to give him the rest of his life. And then Marie introduced someone else. Claire Delacroix was 38 years old now, the same age her father had been when he died. She walked onto the stage with tears streaming down her face, looking at the man her father had saved. "I do not remember him," Claire said. "I was 3. All I have are photographs and stories and the knowledge that he died doing something extraordinary." She looked at Jimmy. "But I have also had you. Every time I watch you on television, every time you made me laugh, I thought about my father. I thought about what he would say if he could see what his sacrifice had created." She smiled through her tears. "I think he would be proud, not because you are famous, but because you bring joy to people. You make the world a little lighter. And that is worth dying for." Jimmy pulled her into a hug. Two strangers connected by a man who had been dead for 35 years, finally meeting because a mother had spoken name. "I'm going to carry him with me," Jimmy whispered. "Every show, every joke, every moment of my career. I'm going to carry Vincent Delacroix with me." Claire nodded against his shoulder. That is all he would have wanted. To be remembered. To know that his sacrifice meant something. The episode ended with something unprecedented. Jimmy read Vincent's name aloud. Not once, but 35 times. Once for every year he had not known. "Vincent Delacroix," he said with each repetition. "The man who saved my life. The father Claire never got to know. The husband Marie has been honoring for 35 years. The audience joined him. 300 voices speaking the name of a man most of them had never heard of, giving him the recognition he had been denied for 3.5 decades. And then Jimmy made a promise. From now on, he said, "I will say his name at the beginning of every show, not as a ritual, but as a reminder that every life is built on the lives of others. That none of us got here alone. That somewhere in our past, someone gave something so we could have everything." He looked at Marie and Claire. Vincent Delacroix gave his life on September 12, 1989. I have had 35 years because of him. Every laugh I have earned, every joy I have spread, belongs to him as much as it belongs to me. He turned to the camera. If you're watching this, I want you to think about your own Vincent Delacroix. The person who sacrificed for you, who made your life possible, who gave without expecting anything in return. He paused, and then say their name. Say it out loud. Let the universe hear it. Because as long as we speak their names, they're still with us. Vincent Delacroix. That is the name I never knew. That is the name I will never forget. The Vincent Delacroix Foundation was established within months. It honors first responders, good Samaritans, and ordinary people who risk everything to save strangers. Every year, it recognizes the Vincents of the world, the people who run toward danger when everyone else runs away. Marie Delacroix became a regular presence at the Foundation's events. At 81, she finally sees her husband's name spoken aloud, finally sees his sacrifice acknowledged. Claire Delacroix has become an advocate for organ donation and heroic action. She travels the country telling her father's story, inspiring others to be the person who runs 30 feet. And Jimmy Fallon, true to his word, says the name at the beginning of every show. Tonight's show is brought to you by a man named Vincent Delacroix, who ran 30 feet to save a stranger and gave his life so I could stand here. That is how every episode begins now. With a name, with a reminder, with a promise that the man who made everything possible will never be forgotten. Some names we carry our whole lives without knowing. Some names are waiting 35 years to be spoken. Some names change everything when we finally learn them. Vincent Delacroix. That was the name Jimmy Fallon never knew. That is the name he will carry forever. That is the name that made everything possible. This story was created using insights into human psychology and emotional storytelling. It is fictional and does not represent real events or real individuals.